It is a momentous occasion for India-Australia bilateral relation. The first virtual summit is a breakthrough in building a comprehensive and strategic partnership with India and of course, together with Australia. So I understand there was a gap of about 3 decades between the visit of Rajiv Gandhi, our prime minister, way back in 1986, and then another trip by Prime Minister Modi uh, in 2014. But I also like to inform my readers across India about a bit of Australia. Like we have about 7 lakh of Indian diaspora living in Australia. Australia GDP is more than 1.4 trillion. It makes it 13th largest economy in the world, rich in education, scientific research, and vibrant democracy. So let me introduce High Commissioner Mr. Barry O'Farrell to talk about the moment with BW Businessworld. He's a deft Indian hand in Australia and among the leadership, and initiated a lot of discussion and the thread with Indian uh, leadership during his premiership, in Australia. So welcome, High Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Manish.
Sir, my first question, of course, did it take COVID-19 to formulate a breakthrough and set out the comprehensive strategic partnership with India? And how will it shape Indo-Pacific vision in terms of concrete measures?
Look, I believe it was always destined to occur, but I think COVID only strengthened the importance and the need for like-minded democracies like Australia and India to work together regionally and to work together globally. And as you know, as Prime Minister Modi talked about yesterday, we have a sacred responsibility in relation to things like the Indo-Pacific and delivering security and stability there, as well as multilateral institutions that can improve our region and the world.
High Commissioner, I have been for the past, always talking about the closer defense cooperation with Australia. With last High Commissioner also, I insisted on some more concrete measures. I think moment has come when we see the bilateral defense and security cooperation taking a new shape. But despite, in addition to MLSA, are there any concrete measures where two countries' defense industry come together, make equipment and build capability all together? In the region, both are net importer of defense. So how do you see such collaboration and gap, High Commissioner?
Well, I think the difference between the pre-COVID and the present, and then hopefully post-COVID, is that for all of us, nations and businesses, the importance of resilient supply chains of diverse manufacturing bases has become clear. So I think you will see the continued efforts of the Australian government to ensure that opportunities that arise in the relationship are able to be mutually exploited by industry and business on both sides of the Indian Ocean, but also that we currently do have in place a strong architecture in relation to the business-to-business organisation. That was demonstrated in February when I had arrived in this country by a couple of days, and the Minister for Tourism, Trade and Investment led a 400-strong delegation from Australia to look at a variety of sectors in a variety of places across India.
High Commissioner Barry, but I would like to understand, did Prime Minister Scott Morrison discuss the defence equipment manufacturer Make in India partnership with Prime Minister Modi in such a concrete terms? Did something did unfold?
Well, it was a strategic discussion. It delivered a comprehensive strategic agreement, partnership agreement. That covers 8 other agreements. But there is an understanding. There's an understanding, I think, by nations everywhere about the renewed importance needed to be placed on resilient supply chains. And as I said before, equally, the need for diversification in relation to manufacturing hubs.
But Australia, of course, the key strategic location has their own problems. Having understood that, Australia, say, is also a net defense importer like India. But how do you look at your defense ecosystem back home and building your strength? If you would like to know, Australia per se.
Well, I think Australia will continue to do in the post-COVID world what we've done previously, which is we trade freely and fairly, and openly, not only within the region but across the globe. I don't see that changing. We have an active business community that is capable of spotting an opportunity and pursuing those opportunities. And I think that as a result of this agreement and some of the elements within the agreement, there will be new opportunities that arise for trade, for investment, which can only benefit both our countries.
Coming back to Prime Minister's statement when he focused on the alternative supply chain with India, could you talk about what will be the mechanism to drive such initiative within the industry? And when we talk about such alternative supply chain, could you explain what is this all about?
Well, it is about trying to provide both of us, but equally other countries around the world who are facing the same realisation, with an understanding that we need to have in place strong supply chains, resilient supply chains, and I think every country is going to be assessing at an economic level how they do that. For Australia, clearly that is an issue. Yesterday, an agreement was signed by a Minister for Energy in relation to fuel supplies, which is providing backup in case something happens down the future. That's an example of what's happening in Australia. We see policy changes here in India. But my point, Manish, is that business is very good at spotting opportunities. They know that governments have spotted the need to ensure greater resilience with supply chains. We have mechanisms in place like ABEX, the Australian Industry Business Exchange, to assist, if required, in giving those businesses a shove and a head start when it comes to those things. All those usual things will continue. The fact that we're seeing the same issue with fresh eyes, it doesn't mean we yet have to change the complete architecture.
High Commissioner Summit, virtual summit, also talks about the greater economic partnership, with India, and also talks about broader Australian investment into India. Basically, does Summit outline any such concrete measures, initiative, fund for the Australian investor to come in and set up, their base in India? That will, of course, be a greater economic partnership. Some concrete measures you'd like to talk about, take away from the summit.
Well, again, Manish, it's a strategic framework document supported by specific measures across eight areas, and as I say, initiatives that we've been pursuing in the past, like the ABEX we saw here with 400 business people in February. That sort of exercise will continue. Last year, we saw some of our pensions funds in India looking for opportunities and indeed making investments in India. So we expect that process to continue. What we signed yesterday was a comprehensive strategic partnership agreement to lift the relationship between India and Australia, not just in defence and science and technology, but also, as was stated in the agreement, a desire to re-engage in relation to a free trade agreement between our two countries.
What is the incentive for the Indian investor for say, particularly in the area of mine and minerals in Australia, to explore any such things which come up, maybe the post summit, or if you can outline something?
Well, we know generally that Australia is a safe place for people to invest. We know generally that whether people want to invest in agriculture in Australia or invest in the mineral sector, opportunities abound. Australia is known as a big country with a fractional population compared to India, and we've seen some terrific investments that have occurred there previously. And I think just like Australian business people, business people in this country can spot an opportunity, and we continue to see interest, and I'm sure we will continue to see interest post-COVID of investment and trade flows into Australia.
High Commissioner, this mutual logistic agreement, how will it unfold a greater defense partnership, joint exercises? Could you outline some of those projects which is underway, we can be seen in the future happening, taking place closer between two countries?
Well, it effectively puts a framework for the first time around our collaboration with India in these sorts of exercises. So again, it's an arrangement to make what are growing and more complex defence collaborations easier to undertake, and that's good in many ways. It's good at the strategic level, but equally we know that when visiting vessels are in port, it's good for local economies as well. So there's an upside everywhere. But ultimately, what's going to drive the defence and the strategic relationship, what is going to define how it impacts both our countries and also our region, is the fact that the Prime Ministers have asked our foreign and defence ministers to meet at least every 2 years to make sure that we're taking forward the Prime Minister's visions, the vision that was expressed yesterday.
High Commissioner, I also understand in the geopolitical situation, something called, we have the Quad, which was also discussed and seen as a step up in the direction. At the same time, the centrality of ASEAN was also focused. How do you see these two regional bloc and concept, working together, creating a better ecosystem in the Indian Ocean as well as in the Pacific?
Well, the Quad's been a useful forum for like-minded democracies to discuss critical issues like maritime and cyber security and counter-terrorism. And they're issues today, they were issues before COVID, and one can't imagine they won't be issues post-COVID. So that forum will continue to be important, but it's one of many for both of us, because we don't only engage bilaterally, we engage multilaterally, and this wonderful term plurilaterally. And so Australia's been engaging with ASEAN, we're a dialogue partner of ASEAN, and we've been talking to them about COVID and related issues. But equally, on a regular basis, the foreign secretaries of India and Australia have been in contact with their counterparts in Japan, in New Zealand, the United States, the Republic of Korea and Vietnam, to discuss similar issues around their shared experiences of COVID, but also issues around global supply chain. So India and Australia have many things in common. And one of them is to reach out to neighbours and friends, to consult, to work together to deliver the sort of safe, secure Indo-Pacific region we want to see.
High Commissioner, how do you see Quad developing as a military strategy, concrete, taking into the concrete shape in the region? And also, would you see it diversifying among nation which is willing to join? Say, UK has openly talked about, he said, leaving the boat, I would like to jump in the Quad. How do you see such mechanism at work for the Quad?
Yeah, well, the important thing to remember, Manish, is that the Quad is not aligned with our nations. Well, the Quad brings together officials from our foreign affairs departments, our ministries of external affairs. It's not effectively a defence gathering. It's a gathering of officials to look at diplomacy. Decisions as to how it might move, how it might grow its membership are matters for it. But at this stage, I think it's clear, and we had the ministerial level meeting last year, that in its current iteration, with its current focus, with a focus that has included some COVID-related issues at this time, it's been working well for all of those nations involved.
High Commissioner Barry, back to again our geopolitical situation. India, of course, has an Indian Ocean region, is a vast network, also has a responsibility to provide net security, and so do you have, in the South Pacific. You have something called Pacific Step Up, and India's Forum for India-Pacific Island Cooperation, and India-Pacific Ocean Initiative. Do we see some joint exercise, joint patrolling and cooperation in this area? Because that will help both countries to cover and make it a place as far as the neutrality is concerned and law of sea is concerned. How do you look at such a formulation? And
well, firstly, we do have convergence around the Indo-Pacific, and not only do we have the step up in the Pacific, but we have our foreign policy white paper that was released, which talks about, in particular, the broad Indo-Pacific region and our shared responsibility with India to deliver the security and the stability that area requires. We're both committed to ensuring that it's a region that is free, open, prosperous, and secure. And that was said by both prime ministers yesterday. The issue is to go to you directly to the answer to your question, is one that may or may not be considered by the Foreign Affairs and Defence Ministers in the 2+2 arrangement that was agreed yesterday.
But in the coming times, do we see this joint mechanism or patrolling happening in these two regions together? Where there is any possibility, say in both ocean, in large sea?
Well, I say again, that's the sort of matter that the initiative yesterday, the 2+2 of our defence ministers and our foreign affairs ministers meeting at least once every 2 years, it would be matter for them. In the meantime, we will continue those bilateral deployments with each other that have been going on, and of course each country will continue to undertake its own activities within its maritime domains.
High Commissioner Barry, one of the important aspects of our relationship is education. I understand. I think some about 40,000 Indian students, they prefer Australia as a destination to advance their study, learn in environment of research. Any further incentive for Indian students to come in and study in Australia? Does Summit have something to offer for Indian students, or do you have some plan to announce now?
Well, yeah, I was pleased yesterday when Prime Minister Modi thanked Prime Minister Morrison for the care of students who have been in Australia during the COVID process. And of course, we will continue as a country, open our doors to students from everywhere who would like to come and study in our quality institutions. And I think the first thing we have to offer is the fact that we've had, at this stage, good success in battling COVID. And from a health perspective, it is a safe country. The better news for students who may be listening, though, and watching, is that last month the Prime Minister announced a 3-stage roadmap towards a COVID-safe country, and that included in the 3rd stage the Australian government considering the return of international students to significant and subject to significant and sustained suppression of the virus, and authorities being able to manage it. So you'll understand, Manish, that just as India and Australia and other countries are at different stages of the COVID battle, the penultimate decision and consideration of government before it's ended will be the departure and arrival of citizens from its shores. So our Prime Minister's announced a 3rd stage, a 3-stage package to try and get us back to normal. Stage 3 involves the restoration of international students coming to the country. I'm optimistic about it. Australia's had good success to date in meeting its targets in these areas, and I'm hoping that not only will we meet our target, but also the aspirations of those students in India who'd like to come and gain that quality education in Australia, a safe country in every sense, and a country in which the cost of our education is more competitive than some of our northern hemisphere colleagues.
High Commissioner, I see Australia has been raising a lot of critical questions regarding the COVID-19, the spread of pandemic, and the very aspect of the investigating the roots of the pandemic. I also see, rightfully, Prime Minister Scott Morrison has also raised quite a debate over this the investigation and formed a sort of mutual partners. How do you see such investigation unfolding as far as the COVID-19 concerned? What the positive result and outcome we expect out of that?
Well, the sole goal of both Prime Minister Modi when he raised it at the G20 and the Australian government when it was raised in Australia was to ensure that the next time the world faces a pandemic, whether in one country, 100 countries or globally, the World Health Organization is better placed to deal with it. Every time any organization experiences a peak activity, there should be a review to ensure that the next time they're even better able to deal with it. Both Australia and India are strong supporters of multilateral institutions. Prime Minister Modi has continued, even during the COVID crisis, to talk about the need to strengthen a number of multilateral institutions. Australia supports that approach because it's all about improving the lives and protecting the lives of citizens in countries around the world.
High Commissioner Barry O'Farrell, I see, thank you so much for coming with us on Businessworld platform. And I see your presence in India is electrifying at the time that India and Australia bilateral relation at the historic juncture, taking a much strategic and comprehensive shape. I thank you so much for coming with us, Manish Kumar Jha, Businessworld, with High Commissioner Barry O'Farrell. Thank you, High Commissioner. Thank you so much.
Thank you.